should warn you before I begin. I am not certain where this ends. Even now, when I close my eyes, I still feel the thin chill that started everything, the kind that gathers in joints and marrow rather than on the skin. It began on my mother's birthday, November 1st. Not precisely Day of the Dead, though the veil is thin around then. Thin enough that a voice whispered into the wrong ear can come across like breath. We went early to the cemetery before the grounds filled with plastic flowers and restless families. Ours is a small place, a single gravel lane, 2 pepper trees leaning like old women sharing a rumor, and a line of graves that you can survey from the gate to the far wall if you stand on your toes. Sound carries there. Dry leaves rasp loud, a bird's wing feels like a stitch tearing. My father says it is the acoustics of limestone and iron fencing. I think it's because the living are outnumbered. We brought nothing elaborate, no paper banners or marigold arches, just a candle in a jar, a crust of pan dulce tucked into my bag, and the words we never managed to say when she was dying. We do this every year. My father and I take turns speaking to the stone, except we don't speak. We close our eyes and make room behind our ribs and move our mouths without sound, and somehow it feels like she hears better that way. He goes first. His shoulders shake less now, but I can tell when he is talking to her and when he is talking to himself. After him, I put my palm against the cool name and I try to remember her hands opening a jar, her laugh when flour went everywhere, the smell of hairspray at weddings. My little brother wanders when we do this. He was 3 when she died. Memory for him is mostly a family story he's trying to retell correctly. Sometimes he picks up pebbles and stacks them. Sometimes he chases a moth. This time he drifted toward the far corner where the ground darkens. And the graves are newer, and when I called his name, he didn't answer, but that happens, and besides, the cemetery was empty and quiet, and we could see him if we turned our heads a little. There is a superstition, old as the dust itself, that you should never leave food for the dead unless you mean it, and never take home anything that is not yours. My grandmother used to smudge doorways with copal when someone came back from the cemetery. My mother kept a dish of water and a pinch of salt by the threshold for the same reason. We forgot both this year. I don't know why. Maybe grief grows careless when it learns your patterns. Maybe the door was already open. When we returned home, the tiredness came on fast. Not the honest fatigue of work, but that bone-deep heaviness the day after a fever, like you've been digging and you can't find the hole. It always happens on her birthday, but this time it felt heavier. A weight that pushed my thoughts down to the floor. To trick ourselves out of it, we repeated our small ritual. We ordered a pizza. We put on something silly for my brother. And we harvested the kind of jokes that only families invent and no one else would laugh at. Grease on a paper plate, a soft fizz from an open soda, my brother's mouth ringed in sauce. These are ordinary things, and ordinary things are the ropes you tie yourself to when weather moves in. He fell asleep first, of course, right there on the couch with one hand still in the air, as if reaching for a slice that wasn't there. My father and I talked, but not about anything worth writing down. School, a warning light in the truck, whether the neighbors had finally painted their wall. We talked this way on purpose on November 1st, because there is a kind of silence that grows teeth if you feed it too directly. When he went to bed, he touched my shoulder and held it a second longer than he needed to. I stayed behind to put away the leftovers and rinse the plates. I remember standing in the glow of the open refrigerator and thinking my mother used to scold me for leaving it open and how I would gladly be scolded once more. That was when someone knocked at our door. It was unambiguous, knuckles on wood, measured and polite. 3 knocks. I know the sounds of this house. The gate rings one way, the mailbox complains another, the wind is its own old man. This was a hand. But you can't knock on our front door from the street, not without crossing the metal gate in the front yard. The gate is locked at night. The yard is empty. No one should have been standing that close to our door. I held my breath and listened hard for the scrape of the gate, a voice, the drag of a shoe. There was only the faint hiss of the refrigerator and the sound of my heart narrowing. My father came down the hall before I could call him, as if the knocking had woken him from a shallow and afraid kind of sleep. "Did you hear?" I started, and he was already nodding, already slipping his feet into the shoes he keeps by the door, already pulling the key off the nail. We went out together. The night air had that metallic smell it gets before rain. He swung the gate. The latch complained and then surrendered. We looked at the street. Nobody. We looked at the front yard. Nothing. He touched the rail and his hand came away cold as if something wet had been there a moment ago. We walked the perimeter, a careful circle, and on the other side of the fence the neighbor's cat lifted its head, watched us, and then laid it back down as if even our fear bored it. There are reasonable explanations for everything. I repeat this to myself the way some people recite prayers, but I could not find one that would put a person at our door and then erase them. When we came back inside, the television had gone to that soft blue the streaming box shows when it waits for another decision. A glass had rolled to the edge of the coffee table and stopped there like it was thinking about falling. I didn't see my brother at first, and in that thin slice of time my heart simply quit. I said his name. My father said it louder. 2 steps and I was at his bedroom door with my palm on the wood, already prepared to find it locked from inside, already prepared to throw myself at it. The door swung open before any of that was necessary. He was there, tucked in neatly, a blanket pulled to his chin, breathing with the slow confidence of a child who has never met the dark at full strength. We have to carry him to bed when he falls asleep on the couch. We always have. He's heavy when he's sleeping. His limbs refuse to coordinate. He has never, not once, gotten up on his own and gone to his room and pulled the blanket that high and turned onto his side and arranged himself into that precise little comma. He would have had to pass directly between the couch and the hallway while I was still picking up plates, and the floorboards would have told on him, and the door would have told on him, and the hall light would have told on him, and I would have told on him. Instead, the house said nothing, and he lay there like someone had guided him, washed him, said a quiet good night in a language I didn't know we spoke. I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself that grief makes you silly. I told myself 100 things, each smaller than the last, until all I had left was a pinprick of ordinary to hold in my mouth like a pill. I went to my room, sat on the edge of the bed, and practiced breathing until the air decided to return to me. Only when I stood to close the window did the smell reach me. Earth, the damp kind that clings to fingers in the fold of a sleeve and something faint under it, like incense long after the smoke is gone. I slept badly. The house listened. Somewhere a faucet ticked. Sometime near morning the temperature dropped, not in the room but inside me. A slip of cold that made me curl around it the way you curl around a secret you don't want to name. I dreamed that our gate had opened by itself. I dreamed that footsteps circled the house and then circled again. I dreamed that someone who had never learned our rules stood just inside our door, head tilted, as if memorizing the way our air moved from room to room. When I woke, my mouth tasted like candle wax. I wish I could say that this was only the first night and that the rest can be told neatly. I can't. I can only tell you that after the knocking there was a second sound and then a third, and by the time we recognized a pattern, we were too tired to admit it. I can tell you that we forgot the salt bowl, and that when I mentioned it to my father, he made the sign of the cross without meaning to. I can tell you that on the stove, the pizza box breathed in and out like an animal because of the air from the window. and that I stared at it for so long I convinced myself it would speak. And I can tell you what I knew then without wanting to know it. Something from the cemetery had heard us. When the rain began the next day, it sounded gentle at first, like a kind of forgiveness. But by afternoon, it had thickened into that endless curtain that muffles everything. The house grew dim early, though the clock insisted it was barely 3. My father stayed in his room. I could hear his breathing through the wall, slow, deliberate, like he was trying to make sleep happen by force. My brother played with his little toy cars for a while, then drifted toward the couch and slept again. I made tea and sat on the kitchen stool, my body heavy in ways I could not describe. Not tired, not sick, just weakened, as if something had leached a portion of me during the night and gone on its way heavier than before. By evening, I had given up on doing anything useful. I pulled a blanket around my shoulders and watched the water thread down the windows. My thoughts tangled. Every few minutes I'd picture that door, the quiet knocking, the space between sound and silence. I told myself it was nothing. Rain makes you remember wrong. Rain teaches walls to speak. I must have dozed off because the next thing I remember is the chill waking me again. The television screen was a dull blue rectangle. The blanket had slipped to the floor. My brother was still asleep beside me, small and warm and breathing evenly. Somewhere deeper in the house, a door creaked open. Not slammed. Just that long, weary sigh wood makes when it's touched after too long. I whispered my father's name, but no answer came. Another sound followed, a faint rhythm on the tiles, wet and slow. Steps. They began near the front and moved toward the hallway one by one, dragging slightly as if the soles were bare. I wanted to tell myself it was my father checking the windows, but there was something off about the pace. It had no human pause, no breath between. It moved like a clock hand. I stood, but my legs trembled so hard the blanket tangled around my feet. The steps reached the corridor. The air shifted. There's a moment before terror where everything inside you turns sharp. Your hearing doubles. Your pulse thickens. That moment passed and I moved. I gathered my brother in my arms and carried him to his room, shut the door and pressed my back against it. The knob was cold against my spine. The steps stopped outside. Then nothing. The rain muffled even the silence. I held my breath until my chest began to burn, waiting for another sound, but there was only the smell, wet earth, a faint sweetness like decayed flowers left too long in a vase. I wanted to call out to my father, but when I opened my mouth, nothing came. It wasn't that I was whispering, I couldn't. Something heavy pressed against my lungs, a paralysis of sound. I don't know how long I stood there. At some point, exhaustion won. I slid down to the floor, still leaning against the door, still holding that weight in my chest. When I opened my eyes again, pale light was leaking through the curtains. The rain had stopped. My father stood over me, confused and frightened. He asked why I was sleeping there. I didn't have an answer ready. I told him I thought someone had come into the house, that I'd heard footsteps. He nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting that. Then in a low voice, he said, "I dreamed it too." He told me everything over breakfast that neither of us really ate. The whole previous day, while he slept through the storm, he'd been trapped in a loop. In his dream, someone walked around the house, again and again, endless circuits. They didn't knock, didn't call, just circled, brushing the windows with fingertips, pressing softly on the doors. He couldn't see their face. Sometimes the figure paused as if listening, then continued. My father tried to wake up, but his body refused. He said it felt like something pressed him down into the mattress, as if the air itself was heavier there. When he finally managed to open his eyes, the sky outside was black. He lay still, afraid to move, listening. Then he heard the front door open, the hinges complaining, the latch clicking. Steps entered the hallway. He assumed it was me, maybe getting a blanket, maybe checking on my brother. The steps stopped outside my room. He nearly called out but decided against it. He said he could hear my breathing from the doorway. Except it wasn't me. It was slower, deeper, almost rhythmic, as if something enormous tried to imitate the pace of sleep. He closed his eyes again, hoping it would fade. But when sleep reclaimed him, the dream changed. He stood outside my room, door half open, watching someone sitting on my bed. At first, it was only a shadow. Then it shifted forward and he saw that it was wrapped completely in black fabric like a shroud. No face, no hands, just the shape of a person under the cloth. In the dream, it stood up. The fabric moved but made no sound. That's when he woke, gasping, and went to find me. I listened, every hair on my arms rising. The daylight seemed thinner after his words. He looked at me the way people look at a storm they can't predict, half angry, half frightened, entirely helpless. I told him what I had felt, the footsteps, the door, the paralysis, and he nodded again. "It started yesterday," he said, "at the cemetery. There are beliefs here older than the church, things our grandmothers muttered while stirring broth. They say the wind that passes through a graveyard at the turn of November carries more than cold. They say you must wash your feet with salt when you come home so the ground doesn't follow." We had forgotten. That night we lit a candle for my mother, whispered a prayer neither of us remembered completely. The flame leaned hard to one side, though no window was open. My brother laughed in his sleep, a small, bubbling sound that made my father's eyes fill with tears. And outside, beyond the fence, the gravel shifted once, then again, like someone testing the path. We decided to leave the house the next morning, though we didn't say it out loud. My father suggested we get some air, but I could see the way he avoided looking down the hallway. Even my brother, usually the first to complain, dressed quickly, eyes darting toward the front door as if he could already feel the open sky waiting for him. The day was gray but dry, a rare break between storms. We drove to the shopping center 2 towns away, the one with the movie theater and the supermarket joined by a glass walkway. It was busy enough to make us feel invisible, which was what we wanted. We moved through stores without purpose, picking things up, setting them down again. My father bought batteries we didn't need. I bought a candle that smelled like cinnamon, even though I hated cinnamon. My brother clutched a packet of cereal as if it were treasure. We ate lunch, laughed too loudly at nothing. It felt like pretending to be alive, and for a few hours we almost managed it. But even in the hum of the mall, something in me stayed alert, listening for a rhythm that didn't belong. Every echo off the tiles made my stomach tighten. I kept expecting to see a figure reflected in the shop windows, someone moving when we stood still. By evening, our arms were full of bags we didn't remember filling. My father joked about needing another job to pay for our panic. I smiled because it was easier than answering. When we reached the parking lot, the air smelled like wet iron, and I knew we'd waited as long as we could. None of us wanted to admit we were afraid to go home. The road back was long and mostly empty. My brother hummed under his breath in the back seat. My father tapped the steering wheel in time. I stared out at the fields, black with rain, and thought about how thin the line is between carrying the dead and being carried by them. I wondered if what followed us cared about boundaries like walls and gates. When we turned into our street, the neighborhood looked wrong, still, almost staged. No lights, no dogs barking. Our house waited, dark except for the faint reflection of the dashboard lights on the front windows. My father opened the gate and parked under the awning. "I'll grab the heavy stuff," he said. My brother was already halfway to the front door, cereal box in hand. Then he screamed. It wasn't a startled sound, it was raw, breaking. I dropped the bag I was carrying and ran. The door to the house was open. He stumbled out, face pale, eyes wide with a terror I didn't think a child could contain. My father caught him before he reached the street. "She's inside," he sobbed. "The lady's inside." We charged through the door together. The air inside was different, thick, like walking into a basement full of wet stone. My skin prickled instantly. The living room light flickered when we turned it on. Nothing moved, but the scent of soil and something older, something sweet and spoiled, hung in the air. My father swept through the rooms, opening closets, pulling back curtains, nothing. Still, the feeling was unmistakable. We were not alone. My brother refused to go near the living room again. He clung to my arm, shaking, repeating, "She was sitting there. She was looking at me." His voice thinned on the word looking. He couldn't describe her face, only that her eyes were wrong. Too far apart, he said, and I couldn't tell if he meant physically or something deeper. As if her gaze reached two places at once. We turned on every light, opened the windows, and let the air churn through. It didn't help. The house seemed to breathe back at us, slower and colder. My father sat my brother on the couch, offered him water, and whispered something like a prayer. I told myself it had to be imagination, a child's misunderstanding in the dark. But there was that smell again, stronger now. The same wet earth and incense that had drifted through my room 2 nights before. It coated the back of my throat. That night, my brother refused to sleep alone. My father let him curl up in his bed, and for the first time in years, I saw my father hesitate before turning off the lamp. He asked if I wanted to stay with them, but pride, or something like it, made me shake my head. Someone had to act like nothing was happening. Someone had to believe walls still meant safety. When I closed my door, the quiet pressed in. I sat on the bed and stared at the blank wall, counting heartbeats until they blurred together. I thought of every story my grandmother used to tell about souls that followed gifts home, about spirits that tested families during mourning seasons. She'd said that after visiting graves, you must burn copal or at least sprinkle salt water by the threshold to remind the air who it belongs to. We hadn't done any of it. We had walked straight inside, still carrying the cemetery dust on our shoes. I could almost hear her voice in my head now. "You left the door open, Nina. They only come in if you leave the door open." I pulled the blanket higher, told myself I didn't believe any of it, and listened to the rain start again. Soft at first, then heavier. As if someone were walking on the roof, pacing from one end to the other. I woke in the dark because the cold had found me again. It crawled up from the floor this time, seeping through the mattress, coiling around my spine. I tugged the blanket up to my chin and tried to ignore it, but the chill carried a rhythm. 3 slow pulses, like something breathing under me. I pressed my hand against the bed frame. It was trembling. When the blanket slid from my shoulder, I told myself it was gravity. When it jerked twice more, sharp and deliberate, I stopped pretending. 1 pull, 2 pulls, 3. The blanket fell to the floor, landing exactly where my feet would have touched if I dared to stand. I froze. The room was utterly still, but I could hear the faintest whisper, like fabric dragging against wood. I wanted to move, to grab my phone, to run, but my body had turned traitor. My breath came shallow and ragged, my heart thudding in my throat. Then, with a sound like someone exhaling from beneath the bed, the edge of the blanket shifted again, pulled slowly out of sight, vanishing into the shadow gap under the frame. I think I stopped breathing. The dark there was different, thicker, as if the air had weight. I imagined eyes opening beneath me, patient, ancient, waiting for me to look. I counted the seconds until my pulse steadied enough for thought. Then I made a plan, 4 steps to the door. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd done it 1,000 times. I whispered the count again and again, a prayer disguised as arithmetic. When I finally moved, I did it fast, swinging my legs to the side, pushing off the mattress without letting my feet touch the floor for more than an instant. I ran. The doorknob slipped in my sweaty hand, then gave. I slammed it open and burst into the hallway, the boards groaning under my steps. Behind me, something followed. I didn't see it, I didn't need to. The air shifted with each stride, and a faint, high-pitched laugh, thin as wire, floated after me. It wasn't loud. That made it worse. The kind of laugh meant for itself, not for anyone to hear. I reached my father's room, yanked the door open so hard it hit the wall. "Dad!" My voice cracked, breaking into the syllable. He sat up immediately, eyes wide, my brother stirring beside him. "She's..." I started, but the words failed because right then we all heard it. Footsteps pounding from my room down the hall. Light but fast, like someone running barefoot on stone. They passed my door, past the living room, faded toward the kitchen. Then silence. We held still for a long time. The only sound was my brother's breathing, quick and uneven. My father rose finally, jaw set, and grabbed the flashlight from the drawer. "Stay here," he said. I wanted to argue, but he was already gone, beam of light slicing through the corridor. The house absorbed him. Every creak echoed. Every reflection moved a fraction too slow. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching my brother's hand, both of us staring at the door until he returned. When he did, his face looked years older. He didn't say what he'd seen. He just motioned for us to follow. In the hallway, on the tiles still damp from last night's rain, were footprints, bare, small, and filled with black earth. They began near my bedroom door, crossed the corridor, circled once in front of my brother's room, and stopped at the side of his bed. The final print pressed so deep into the dust it looked almost deliberate. A signature. No one spoke. My father knelt, touched the edge of one print, and rubbed the dirt between his fingers. It was cold and gritty like the soil of the cemetery. He stared at it for a long time before whispering, "This isn't mud from outside. It's older." I wanted to say it couldn't be, that maybe my brother had come in half asleep, that maybe I had dragged something in. But then my brother said quietly, "Maybe they came for their ball?" We turned to him. He stood by the doorway, small in his pajamas, eyes still puffy with fear but calm now, almost relieved, as if he'd solved something we hadn't. My father frowned. "What ball?" He didn't answer right away. He went to his dresser, opened the bottom drawer, and rummaged through shirts and socks until he found it. A small metal sphere about the size of a fist, dull gold in color, heavy-looking. It rattled when he shook it like there was liquid inside. He held it out to us as if offering proof of innocence. "This," he said. "I took it from a grave." The words hung there, impossible to absorb. My father's face drained of color. I felt the room tilt. He went on, explaining as if it were obvious. It was pretty. It was just sitting there, not even on top, half buried. I thought maybe no one cared about it anymore. The air in the hallway thickened. The flashlight flickered once and died. I could smell that same damp soil again, stronger now, rising from the prints, from the seams of the floor, from the sphere itself. My brother's fingers glistened with condensation, though the metal looked dry. My father spoke first, his voice a whisper. "Put it down." He placed it on the table. The sound it made was wrong, too soft, like setting something on flesh instead of wood. We stared at it, none of us daring to touch. "Don't move it again," my father said finally. "Not until we take it back." That night, we didn't go back to our rooms. We gathered in the car, locked the doors, and tried to sleep there under the thin safety of the roof and rain. My brother curled between us, clutching his stuffed bear instead of the metal ball. I watched the house through the windshield, waiting for the lights to flicker. They never did. But once, just before dawn, I thought I saw a shape pass by the front window, tall, draped in something that moved without wind. Morning light never really reached inside that house anymore. It slid along the walls like it was afraid to settle. My father brewed coffee and drank it without tasting it, his eyes fixed on the object on the table, the sphere my brother had stolen. None of us had touched it since the night before. Even so, a ring of damp had formed around it, staining the wood darker, as if it was slowly bleeding moisture into the air. We decided to take it back. It sounded simple, almost mechanical. Return what was taken, apologize, close the door we had opened. But we didn't know how to find that grave again. My brother said it was in the corner where the grass is soft. There were dozens of corners, hundreds of graves, all soft with grass. We wrapped the sphere in a paper bag. When my father lifted it, a faint metallic hum vibrated through the air. A sound you feel more than hear, like the low pitch of a bell that never fully fades. He almost dropped it. Before we left, I lit a small candle in front of my mother's photo, murmuring an apology we hadn't earned yet. The wax bent sideways as it burned, the flame pulling toward the door like it wanted to follow us out. The drive to the cemetery took longer than usual. The air was heavy, the sky a dull pewter gray. We didn't speak. My brother sat between us, twisting the hem of his shirt, whispering something I couldn't catch. When I leaned closer, I realized it was the same lullaby my mother used to sing to him when he was small. The sound made my throat close. At the gate, the caretaker wasn't there. Just an old padlock hanging open as if someone had already gone in. My father hesitated, then pushed it aside. The hinges groaned. Inside, everything smelled like rust and rain-soaked soil. We wandered for hours, circling paths we swore we'd already walked. The graves seemed to rearrange themselves when we looked away, crosses leaning in different directions, flowers turning their heads. The deeper we went, the quieter it became, until even the wind felt muffled. Then my brother stopped. "Here," he said, pointing toward a small plot half hidden behind an iron angel missing its wings. The ground there was darker, the earth damp, though the rest of the cemetery was dry. A single stone lay flat, carved only with a woman's first name. No dates, no epitaph. Around the edges, symbols wound in spirals, ancient looping marks that met at a hollow circle in the center. I knew without needing to test it that the sphere would fit perfectly there. My father took it from the bag and placed it into the depression. It clicked softly like a puzzle piece finding home. For a moment, the air seemed to exhale. One long, tired breath. The scent of soil thickened, and then suddenly it was gone. The air cleared. We knelt. I whispered the prayers I remembered, one from church, one from my grandmother, one from nowhere in particular. We said sorry. Over and over. Before leaving, we stopped by my mother's grave. My father placed his hand on the stone, and for the first time in days, he looked like himself. We told her what had happened, or at least the part we could speak aloud. I asked her, quietly, desperately, to keep that thing where it belonged. When we returned home, the air felt lighter, though the house was colder. The sphere's mark on the table had already faded. We thought it was over. For nearly a week, the nights were silent again. My brother slept in his room. My father even whistled once while making coffee, and the sound startled both of us because it felt almost impossible. But peace in our house never stayed long. One evening, as I was closing the curtains, the neighbor's voice startled me. She leaned over the fence, smiling the way people do when they're unsure if they should be smiling at all. "I didn't know you had visitors," she said. I frowned. "We don't." She tilted her head, looking at the window behind me. "Strange. I saw someone last night by the child's window. Looked like a woman covered with something black. I thought maybe a relative was staying with you." Her tone was casual, almost apologetic, but my stomach turned to stone. "When?" I asked. She thought for a moment. Late, maybe 1, 2 in the morning, she was just standing there. I called her name, well, your name. I thought it was you, but she didn't move. The words clung to the air between us. I managed a weak laugh, something about shadows, about how reflections play tricks. She nodded, pretending to believe it, but her eyes said she didn't. That night I didn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps, every gust against the window like someone brushing the glass with their hand. Around 3, I thought I saw movement by my brother's door, a dark ripple, there and gone. I told myself it was nothing, but the smell followed, the damp, coppery scent of the grave. I realized then that returning the object hadn't undone the damage. Whatever had followed us home hadn't been tied to the sphere. It had been tied to the act itself. We had carried it across, and now it lived here, learning our rooms, our habits, the way we breathed when we slept. And maybe, I thought, it wasn't angry anymore. Maybe it was simply patient. December crept in quietly, without decorations or songs, as if the season itself hesitated to cross our threshold. The air in the house was motionless, thick with something I can only call waiting. My brother stopped humming. My father started checking the locks twice, then 3 times each night. Though we both knew locks meant nothing now. It had been 2 weeks since the neighbor's words, 2 weeks since the shadow by my brother's window, and we convinced ourselves that silence meant safety. But silence is only another way of hiding. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold. My father took my brother to visit my aunt for the day, leaving me to sleep in. I woke to the sound of our front gate, the metallic groan of hinges I knew too well. I thought they had returned early, but when I looked out the window, I saw a familiar figure. My mother's old friend, Aunt Diana. She always came by each Christmas ever since I was little. Even after my mother's death, she kept the ritual. Arriving early with small gifts and bread she'd baked herself. She smiled when she saw me and waved. "I brought the presents," she said, lifting a paper bag. "I wanted to surprise you before everyone got home." I let her in. She smelled of cinnamon and cold air. Her husband waited by the car, engine running. I told her to leave the bag near the tree, then turned to sign the delivery receipt her husband had handed me. When I turned back, Aunt Diana was standing frozen, her face drained of color. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her voice came out low, barely audible. "The woman in your living room. She frightened me." I frowned. "What woman?" "The one sitting behind the Christmas tree. She was smiling. I thought she was your aunt." The words lodged in my throat. "There's no one else here." Her eyes darted toward the corner of the room where the tree stood. The colored lights blinked lazily, reflecting off the ornaments. No one sat there. Just the chair my father sometimes used, empty. "She was there," Diana whispered. "I swear. Smiling like this." She mimed a grin so wide it distorted her face. I wanted to believe she was mistaken, but the scent was back. The faint rot of wet earth and something like burned sugar. I felt it coil around us. Diana must have smelled it too, because she shivered and clutched her cross. Her husband called from the car, and she almost ran to him, leaving the bag of gifts where she stood. When they drove off, I locked the door and turned every light on. The house hummed faintly, a kind of vibration you feel in your teeth. I sat in the kitchen until my father came home, unable to move from the chair. When I told him, he didn't question it. He simply said, "She's still here." That night, my brother refused to sleep alone again. I joined them in my father's room, 3 of us lying close as if proximity could save us. For a few nights, nothing happened. I started to believe the presence had dulled into memory. Then came the scream. It happened near dawn, sharp and high. My brother had gone back to sleeping in his own room by then, proud of his bravery. We ran when we heard him. The bathroom door was closed, water running. My father forced it open. My brother sat on the floor, trembling, hair wet and soap still clinging to his shoulders. He was clutching a fistful of hair torn from his head. "She pulled it," he sobbed. "She was behind me." I checked. No one. The mirror was fogged, the tiles slick, the air freezing, but there, near the drain, was a single footprint, small, bare, pressed into the condensation. I touched it. It was ice cold. My father wrapped my brother in a towel, whispering nonsense to calm him. I couldn't stop staring at the footprint until the fog on the mirror cleared, and I saw what had been written across it in streaks of moisture. "Devuélveme lo que es mío." Return what is mine. We had returned it. I wanted to scream that at the empty air, but maybe what she wanted wasn't the sphere. Maybe it was something else we didn't realize we'd taken. The days that followed blurred together. We started hearing faint laughter at night, thin and distant as if from the roof. The smell of damp soil would drift through the vents. Once when I came home from school, I found every mirror in the house covered with condensation, though the day was dry. I began to study what I could. Old books, local legends, anything. There were stories of animas prestadas, borrowed souls, spirits who latch onto grief or guilt and feed on it until nothing of the host remains. Some said they entered through objects tied to the dead. Others said they needed permission. An invitation, a name spoken aloud. My brother had told us the woman's name once, carved on the stone where he found the sphere. We had spoken it aloud when apologizing. We had given her the doorway she needed. Now she didn't need to haunt us from the outside anymore. She was already here, quiet, watching, patient. And at night, when the lights went out, I could feel her standing by the foot of my bed, breathing in rhythm with me, as if learning the pattern for herself. For a few nights after the bathroom incident, I slept with the lamp on. The pale circle of light became my only refuge. Proof that the walls still belonged to us. My brother's hair grew uneven where the handful had been ripped out, a small bald patch that refused to fill in. My father tried to speak of it as an accident, a slip, maybe an illusion caused by shampoo in his eyes. But every time he passed the bathroom door, his gaze flicked to the mirror as if expecting to see words appear again. We tried to continue our lives. I went back to school. My father worked extra hours to stay away from the house. We stopped talking about what had happened. But silence in that place had its own vocabulary. Drawers opened by themselves. The hallway smelled of wet iron when it rained. Sometimes a shadow stretched longer than it should, refusing to move even when the object casting it did. One night, near the end of January, I dreamed, or thought I dreamed, of my mother's voice calling me. Not the way she had spoken when alive, but the soft, echoing version of it I remembered from old home videos. She said my name once and I followed the sound down the hall. When I woke, I was standing in front of my brother's door, hand already on the knob. From the other side came a whisper. "No la abras. Don't open it." I ran back to my room and didn't move until dawn. The next evening, I told my father. He didn't ask questions. He only said, "We're leaving." We packed hastily. Clothes, documents, nothing else. Before locking the door for what we thought would be the last time, my father paused in the living room. "We'll stay with your grandmother," he said, "just until I find another place." We drove all night. My grandmother's house sat on the edge of another town surrounded by orange trees and wind. She welcomed us with open arms, made hot chocolate, told us everything would be fine. And for a little while it was. The nights were still, dreamless. My brother laughed again, but fear has a way of surviving distance. After 3 days, my father decided we should return briefly, to collect the last of our things, to prove to ourselves that the house was just a house. We arrived in the afternoon, sunlight sharp through the dust. From the street, it looked normal. but the moment we stepped inside, we knew. The air was freezing, though every window was closed. The smell, damp, metallic, unmistakable, hit us like a physical force. My father swore softly under his breath. "Grab what you can, we'll be quick." We moved through the rooms, avoiding eye contact with the mirrors. When I passed the living room, I noticed something dark near the floor, a trail of mud leading from the front door to the hall. My brother pointed, voice trembling. "It's laughing," he whispered. At first I thought he meant he was hearing it in his head, but then I heard it too. Faint, distant laughter echoing from somewhere deeper in the house. It rose and fell like someone whispering through the walls. We ran. Outside, my father locked the door again, his hands shaking. The neighbor was in her yard, pretending not to watch. As we reached the car, she called out, "It's been noisy at night. People have heard laughter." Her words hung like frost. We didn't answer. We drove straight back to my grandmother's house, but even there I couldn't escape the feeling that something had followed us. That night I woke to find my brother sitting upright on the floor beside my bed. His eyes were open but blank, as if he were listening to something far away. "She's here," he said softly. "She came with us." When I tried to pull him back into bed, he resisted, whispering, "Yeah," she said, "it's almost time." "Time for what?" I asked. He looked at me then, his voice barely a breath. "For us to remember." I didn't sleep again. Every sound in the house seemed to breathe, every shadow pulsed like a vein. Somewhere in the distance, maybe only in my mind, the laughter began again, closer this time, more certain. I thought I had learned what fear was, until that final night proved I hadn't. It was sometime after 2 in the morning when I woke, throat dry, room dimly lit by the half-open door. For the first few seconds, I couldn't tell what had pulled me from sleep. Then the smell reached me, soil, wet and old, like the earth freshly torn open after rain. My stomach clenched. The air felt thicker, as if the room itself were breathing beside me. I turned my head toward the ceiling, and that's when I saw her. She was hanging there upside down, her long hair brushing the air above my face. The same black cloth wrapped around her body, but this time I could see her hands, thin and gray, fingers curling toward me. Her head tilted slowly, that awful, too-wide smile cutting across her face like a wound. I couldn't even scream. The sound jammed in my throat like a stone. She opened her mouth, and I swear I heard the same voice my brother had imitated in his sleep. "It's almost time." I bolted. My legs moved before my mind did. I crashed through the door, ran down the hallway shouting for my father. He met me halfway, disoriented, eyes wide and frightened. I must have looked insane, trembling and gasping for air, pointing back toward my room. "She's in there," I whispered. He didn't hesitate this time. He grabbed his flashlight and stormed down the hall, my brother clinging to his arm. The beam cut through the dark, slicing across walls and floorboards until it stopped on the ceiling. There was nothing. No woman, no shadow. Only the slow sway of the ceiling fan turning lazily as if mocking me. My father turned to me, ready to speak, when a soft knock echoed from behind us. 3 slow raps on the front door. None of us moved. The knocks came again, louder, steady. The same rhythm I had heard the first night, back when everything had still made sense. My father raised the flashlight toward the sound, hand shaking. "Stay here," he said. But I followed anyway. He opened the door, and the night stared back. The yard was empty, the gate still locked. The air outside shimmered faintly, as if heat were rising from the soil, though it was freezing cold. Then came the laughter. It started faint near the gate, then spread, surrounding us, coming from walls, roof, ground. My brother screamed and covered his ears. The sound wasn't human anymore. It was layered, many voices laughing as one, broken and wet, as if laughter were the only language left to it. My father slammed the door shut, locked it, and turned toward me. "Pack your things, we're leaving, now." We didn't even argue. 10 minutes later, we were in the car, engine stuttering to life. As we pulled away, I looked back through the window. The house was completely dark, except for one room, my bedroom. A faint golden light flickered inside, moving gently, like candlelight behind glass. And in that light, for just a second, I saw her silhouette standing by the window, the same impossible smile gleaming pale against the dark. We drove to my grandmother's again that night, but none of us spoke. The laughter still echoed in my head, a phantom sound stitched into the rhythm of my heartbeat. The following morning, our neighbor called. She said that during the night she and others had heard laughter coming from our house. Loud, hysterical laughter that lasted until dawn. They had seen shadows dancing across the curtains, though everyone knew the house was empty. And that's how we became the haunted family, the story whispered around the neighborhood. People came to take pictures, to ask questions, to gawk. We stopped answering. What could we say? That it started with a single mistake, with a child's innocent hand reaching where it shouldn't? We had returned the sphere, we had apologized, we had prayed. But nothing changed, because some doors once opened never close again. Sometimes, even now, when the night is still and I try to sleep, I hear faint tapping from the wall beside my bed. 3 knocks, patient, deliberate. And then that same voice, low and familiar, whispering in the dark. "You took something that was mine." I don't answer. I just hold my breath until morning, waiting for the day when she'll stop asking, or when she'll decide to take it back herself. If you ever visit a cemetery, remember this. Do not touch what the dead have chosen to keep. Never take anything, not a stone, not a flower, not a memory, because sometimes the dead follow what's theirs, and they never stop until it's home again.